For over 1 decade, I believed my devotion to William was unwavering, but I've come to see his true colors. Far from being dependent on him, my commitment was rooted in love. Yet now, I find myself speechless, drained of all energy as William coldly asserts that with our son, Leo, now self-sufficient, I have no basis to rely on him any longer. He dismissively rejects any attempt I make to explain, his voice loud and clear. Feeling utterly desolate, I realized my attempts to connect with him had failed. In that moment, it felt as if the very bond of love that tied our hearts together had shattered. My affection for William dimmed rapidly. What seemed like a lifetime partnership felt as if it had turned into a connection with a stranger. William's actions made it evident he never truly loved me. His infidelity and eagerness to push me away were proof enough. I resolved not to care about his fate. Determined, I faced William, embracing my identity. My name is Clara, a 47-year-old who had been married to William for a quarter of a century. Our son, Leo, had recently begun his career following college graduation. With the responsibilities of raising a child behind me, I had hoped to explore my own interests. Yet, one major obstacle remained: my relationship with William. William, far from being a supportive husband or father, displayed little to no redeeming qualities. His infidelity was blatant, and his contribution to the household finances was negligible. Whenever I broached the topic of contributing more to our expenses, William would snap back, insisting I was living off his earnings. Hope seemed fleeting. Divorce increasingly appeared as the only viable option, a thought that had occupied my mind frequently. However, the situation was complicated by my promise to Grayson, William's ailing father, to care for him. This obligation made the decision to leave not just difficult but also laden with guilt. In a whirl of emotions, I find myself at a crossroads, struggling to heed my father-in-law's advice while my heart yearns for the freedom of divorce. These mixed feelings send me spiraling into memories of brighter days before my marriage, days filled with laughter and simple joys. Reflecting on those times, I'm reminded of a pivotal moment in my life, which, ironically, stemmed from a period of hardship. My family owned a quaint diner, a labor of love where my father was the chef and my mother the welcoming face serving our customers. The diner was a place of culinary delight, thanks to my father's passion for cooking. However, his business acumen left much to be desired. Driven by a noble yet financially impractical dream, he aimed to fill our patrons' hearts and stomachs without regard for the bottom line. This approach, while admirable, meant our family often faced financial difficulties. Despite these challenges, I grew up proud of the joy our food brought to our customers, never questioning my father's financial service provider. That was until a major crisis during my college years threatened our family's livelihood. Our ingredient supplier declared bankruptcy amid a recession, putting our already precarious financial situation in jeopardy. With no way to recover our advance payments and the threat of closure looming over us, despair filled our home. It was during this dark time that a regular customer offered a beacon of hope. With a generous offer to help us financially, this kind soul asked for nothing more than for us to continue serving our delicious meals. This unexpected gesture allowed us to connect with a new, more affordable food wholesaler, ultimately saving our diner from bankruptcy. A year after this turnaround, as my father and I visited our benefactor to express our gratitude, I encountered his son, William. He suggested dating him as a way of repaying his father's kindness. While we had already thanked his father, William insinuated that refusing his advances could harm my family and our diner's reputation. Caught between gratitude and manipulation, I was left to navigate the complexities of this new relationship, all while grappling with the implications for my family and the future of our beloved diner. While I was out picking up groceries for dinner, I received shocking news. My dad was in the hospital. Dropping everything, I rushed to his side, only to find him in good spirits, laughing off my mother's concerns as an exaggeration. This moment of relief was shattered by a sudden realization I had completely forgotten to get in touch with William. My phone was inundated with his missed calls. In a state of panic, I called William back, only to be met with his frustration over dinner not being ready. I explained the situation about my dad, but William's response was cold and unsympathetic. His demand for me to prioritize him over my father left me feeling small and disrespected. Despite his outburst, I found the strength to assert the importance of family, suggesting he would feel the same if it were someone he cared about. To my dismay, William claimed he wouldn't care even if his own father was in such a situation. This revelation left me stunned and questioning the foundation of our relationship. In the end, I told him he'd need to fend for himself for dinner, hanging up the phone with a heavy heart. This incident was a turning point, shattering any illusions of happiness in our marriage. I realized William saw me more as a servant than a partner. Despite the hurt, I knew I couldn't dwell on my sadness. The thought of divorce began to take root, and I started planning for a future without William. Years later, when Grayson, presumably another family member, was gravely ill and hospitalized, William's indifference to the situation and concern only for the financial implications further confirmed his lack of empathy. His reaction to seeking help from his brother Thomas, despite the strain on our own family, was the final straw. It became clear that William's lack of care extended beyond just my father to any genuine family crisis. This realization pushed me to the edge, ready to end a marriage devoid of mutual respect and understanding. In the midst of financial strain due to Grayson's hospitalization, I committed to handling the bills, a decision William reluctantly accepted. This responsibility came during a tumultuous time, as Grayson's illness led him to resign from his prominent role, a position William then filled. Despite the critical nature of these events, William seemed resentful of my involvement, and his presence at home dwindled, exacerbating the strain in our relationship. Our communication broke down further when planning for our son Leo's future. William's absence became the norm, leaving me to apologize to Leo for the familial discord. Yet, Leo harbored ambitions of attending university in Dallas, a dream I vowed to support despite William's indifference. As time passed, the house grew lonelier with Leo's departure to Dallas. William and William's visits becoming increasingly sporadic. Discussions about finances for Grayson's ongoing medical expenses revealed William's contributions were minimal and possibly dishonest, adding to the growing distance between us. The years rolled by, and with Leo securing employment, thoughts of divorce began to crystallize, demanding careful consideration of timing and approach to minimize conflict. However, it wasn't just about avoiding conflict, it was about confronting a bitter reality. A routine visit to Grayson ended with a startling discovery: my home felt different. The front door was unlocked, and inside, the sounds of the TV and William's laughter hinted at a normalcy that hadn't existed for years. Yet this semblance of normalcy quickly shattered. William had decided to tidy up by discarding my possessions, leaving my personal space barren. His actions spoke louder than words, declaring an end to any pretense of support or partnership. Confronted with this betrayal, I demanded an explanation, only to be met with William's harsh declaration of his exhaustion from supporting me. His words cut deep, marking a turning point in our relationship. For over 2 decades, I believed in a partnership that, in his eyes, was nothing more than a burden. This revelation forced me to face the harsh truth about our marriage. Despite dedicating years to support and understanding, it was clear William saw me not as a partner, but as a liability. The realization that I was considered a failure and a leech in the eyes of the person I had devoted my life to was a profound and painful awakening. My devotion to William was genuine. I wasn't exploiting him. Yet, as I tried to convey this, my resolve waned under the weight of his accusations. William's assertion that with Leo now self-sufficient, I had no grounds to rely on him, silenced me. His refusal to listen marked the end of any hope for reconciliation. In that moment, I felt a profound disconnection, as if the love that once tethered our hearts had irreparably frayed. My affection for William diminished rapidly. It became clear that to him, our marriage was merely a convenience. His actions, not just his readiness to eject me from our life, but his infidelity spoke of a lack of genuine love. Resolved to not let him trample over me, I confronted him with the decision to leave, my departure emphasized by the slam of the living room door. To my dismay, I found my personal belongings gone, discarded on V's orders. The retrieval of my possessions from the disposal company, whose employees had sensed something amiss with William's request and preserved my items, was a small victory. Grateful, I secured my belongings in a storage unit and informed Leon of my imminent departure and the prospect of divorces. Leo's brief response, tinged with fear, left me reflecting on my own emotions. Despite the upheaval, I was determined. My plans for a new beginning, albeit accelerated, were set in motion. The necessity of a temporary stay in a business hotel, while an unplanned expense, was a step towards independence. William's unexpected accusation of theft pertaining to his father's unpaid hospital bills was absurd. It underscored the extent of our estrangement and the necessity of my decision. As I prepared to face the future, the reality of our severed ties became ever more apparent, reinforcing my resolve to start anew, free from the shadows of a marriage that had lost its foundation. "It is what it is," I sighed, reflecting on the complexity of our unraveling relationship. William's demand for me to cover his father's hospital bills was met with my calm refusal. "You're the one who wanted me out," I reminded him, emphasizing that since he had forced me out, I was no longer obligated to manage his financial responsibilities. Despite his accusations of theft, I was clear in my innocence, highlighting the insufficiency of the funds he provided. William, flustered, tried to shift the blame onto me, suggesting I use the money he supposedly gave me. This was ironic, considering he had always underreported his salary, keeping a portion for himself under the guise of an allowance. Unbeknownst to him, I was well aware of the actual figures, having confirmed his salary with Grayson, revealing the extent of William's deceit. Confronted with this truth, William was at a loss for words, his silence speaking volumes. When he finally spoke, trying to justify his entitlement to the money, I seized the moment to assert my desire for a divorce, including a demand for alimony. His reaction to my readiness for legal separation and my mention of having proof of his infidelity was palpable even over the phone. By proposing a meeting to discuss the divorce, backed by the evidence I had gathered, I effectively cornered William, leaving him with no room to maneuver. The surprise in his voice was evident, and despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. I had turned the tables, moving from a position of defense to one of control, setting the stage for a confrontation that would finally free me from a marriage built on deception and manipulation. On that decisive Sunday, I arrived early at the venue for our meeting, filled with a mixture of anticipation and determination. I was hoping, perhaps against hope, to extract an apology from William a tall order, but I was prepared for the challenge. When William arrived, his surprise was palpable upon realizing the meeting place was at a mansion. My mansion, which stood as a symbol of luxury and independence, something he never expected from me. As William stood there, taking in the sight of the grand house that boasted a garden, 3 stories, a basement, and even a home theater, I couldn't help but smile proudly. This house, testament to my secret success, was planned as my sanctuary post-divorce. William's astonishment was evident. He had always underestimated me, seeing me merely as a housewife. His disbelief grew as I led him into the house, where my lawyer awaited to discuss our divorce, his eyes scanning the lavish surroundings, unable to focus on the matter at hand. When William finally voiced his confusion about how I could afford such a place, I was ready with my response. The truth was, I had been earning a substantial income by assisting a friend with her business, a venture that began as a means to secure my independence during our marital strife and impending divorce. This revelation shook William, challenging his preconceived notions of me. The backstory of my financial independence began years earlier, amidst our familial and marital turmoil. Determined not to be left vulnerable, I sought employment that would allow me to sustain myself. Finding a well-paying job was no easy feat, but my friend Harper offered me an opportunity to work with her, an offer that would eventually lead to my unforeseen success. This journey from a strained marriage to financial autonomy was not just about securing a comfortable living space. It was about reclaiming my dignity and proving my capabilities beyond the confines of our home. As William grappled with this new reality, the stark contrast between his expectations and the truth before him underscored the culmination of my journey from dependence to independence, marking the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I work in land-based aquaculture, a sustainable method of fish farming where fish are raised in man-made pools. This approach helps mitigate ocean pollution, making it an environmentally friendly alternative to traditional aquaculture. Harper, whose father initiated this business, is now at the helm, and I joined her team to contribute to its growth. Since I started, the business has flourished, largely thanks to my efforts in negotiation and administrative roles. My success led to a promotion to an executive position, something I attribute to both skill and a bit of luck. As I shared my journey with William, he appeared momentarily defeated, only to then suggest we abandon the divorce proceedings and give our relationship another chance. However, his sudden change of heart seemed motivated more by the revelation of my financial success than by genuine remorse. My response to his plea was firm and unwavering. I could not envision a future with someone whose actions had betrayed our family values, evidenced by his infidelity and neglect towards his own father. I revealed to William that, despite the modest sum he provided, which barely covered our household's basic needs, I was the one who had been paying for Grayson's medical expenses. My earnings from my new role allowed me to manage these bills, something William had never contributed towards meaningfully. Nor had he shown any concern for Grayson B's well-being. This lack of support and empathy was a bridge too far, eroding any trust I had left in him. In the end, with guidance from my lawyer, we proceeded with the divorce. William, perhaps realizing his position was untenable, agreed to the terms, including an alimony payment of $41,000. As we finalized the divorce, I made it clear that he would be responsible for Grayson's hospital bills moving forward. William's agreement, albeit reluctant, marked the end of our marriage, paving the way for me to embrace a new chapter of independence and success, free from the constraints of our past relationship. Feeling a wave of relief wash over me, I watched William leave, marking the end of our tumultuous journey together. While I harbored a slight regret over not receiving an apology, I had one final card to play, a move that I was convinced would elicit the apology I sought. The thought alone brought a smile to my face. A few days later, as I was leaving the office, I heard someone call out to me. Turning around, I saw William, his approach no longer welcome. "We're divorced now, remember? So keep your distance," I reminded him, drawing a clear boundary. William's face was flushed with anger, a clear sign that he had received the news I'd anticipated. "What did you do?" he demanded, frustration evident in his voice. The realization dawned on him too late. "You're asking about your job? Well, isn't it a consequence of your own actions?" I replied, referring to his indiscretion at work. William's affair with a clerk at his company, where he felt untouchable as president, was reckless. After our divorce was finalized, I took the information to Grayson. Despite his disappointment over our divorce, Grayson was incensed upon learning about William's misconduct. The evidence I provided, including photographs of the affair, only fueled his anger further. Grayson then proposed a decisive move, transferring all his shares in the company to me. His intention was clear, not for personal gain, but as a means to remove William from power. In a company like Grayson's, where shareholder votes are pivotal in executive decisions, owning a significant portion of shares could indeed change the leadership landscape. This strategy wasn't just about revenge, it was about accountability. Grayson's decision to entrust me with his shares underlined his trust in my judgment and his desire to see the company led responsibly, a stark contrast to William's approach. As I watched William's realization sink in, the irony of his situation was not lost on me. His own actions had led to his downfall, a fitting outcome for someone who had underestimated the consequences of his decisions. After inheriting Grayson's shares, I suddenly found myself in a powerful position within the company, capable of making significant decisions independently. However, the choice to terminate William's employment wasn't mine. I simply shared the details of William's affair and my updated shareholder status with Thomas, leaving the final decision in his hands. Thomas acted out of concern for the company's well-being, not just compliance with my wishes. When confronted with this reality, William's facade crumbled, and he desperately pleaded for forgiveness, fearing the loss of his career. His pleas fell on deaf ears. The mess he found himself in was of his own making. I made it clear that there was no room for forgiveness, emphasizing that I had divested myself of the shares, passing them on to Thomas and his wife. I wanted to sever all ties with William and the company, moving forward with my life. William's departure from the company was inevitable. His prior conduct, marked by arrogance and a sense of entitlement, left no room for him to remain in any capacity. Once ousted, he struggled to find meaningful employment, ultimately landing a job far removed from his former corporate prestige. This turn of events likely set him on a path filled with regret and financial instability in his later years. In contrast, the end of my marriage and my departure from the company marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one focused on personal and professional growth. While I haven't rushed into another marriage, the prospect of finding companionship among my colleagues remains open, a testament to the hope that life can indeed offer new beginnings. Amidst these reflections, a call from Leo brought a smile to my face. His intention to introduce his girlfriend to me was a reminder that life goes on, filled with new relationships and opportunities. Despite my own marital failure, I held optimism for Leo's future, confident in his stability and judgment. The cycle of life, with its ups and downs, continues, offering lessons and the promise of renewal.